Good morning. Welcome to our webinar called Closing the Skills Gap with Smarter Assembly Systems. Today we have Glenn Nausley, who's the president of Promess Incorporated, and I'm Ed Stockline. I'm the head of sales here at Promess. So today we want to talk a little bit about the skills gap, particularly in the US, but it really applies to all manufacturing globally. While there's a lot of diverse reasons for the skills gap here, we're going to kind of touch on the ones that we see the most often with our customers and the technology related to manufacturing. I have a couple stats here that I want to share, which will kind of lead us into our conversation. So a study done by Deloitte and the Manufacturing Institute anticipates that there's going to be 2.1 million jobs, manufacturing jobs unfilled by 2030. And two of the top consequences cited by, I believe it was 800 US-based manufacturing leaders said that 82% that said not being able to fill jobs is going to have the inability to increase revenue growth. So 82% of them said that. And then 81% said that a consequence is maintaining production levels to satisfy demand, which are going to be huge factors in manufacturing in the US going forward. So to get into some of our discussion, what is the skills gap as we see it?
Well, as Promess sees it, and as I've seen it in the industry, and the skills gap, we've been talking about this for a long time. This isn't a new concept. It seems like it's something that's been talked about for many years now. And as you just mentioned in this article, they're talking about 2.1 million, a shortage of 2.1 million employees in the manufacturing industry by 2030. That's huge. That's a big number. So there's a quantity issue, but there's also a quality issue, or potentially a quality issue. So when you're looking at a skills gap, basically it's a really simple diagram, right? You have a need, and you don't have enough people to fill that need. And what we're seeing a lot of it personally is in the technical area, the controls area, a lot in the electrical, the IT area. So many things are going toward networks now, and different types of internet and Internet of Things and 4.0, and we really don't have at least the direction we're going right now. We don't have the manpower to fill all the needs.
Right. And there's also different levels of technician too, right? You have your highly skilled, the PLC guy that can control anything from his PC. And then you have the average guy that may not be able to handle everything that advanced guy can handle, but he should be able to handle most things, say, within a plant. And the other thing that we were talking about earlier was the technology that's deployed is typically beyond the capability of a lot of those technicians that we have. So you have those advanced guys that can handle anything, but a lot of the stuff that we're working with could be actually too technical for even some of those average guys. So a question for you would be, what could we do to kind of get in front of this technical support need?
Yeah, and exactly what you're saying. I mean, one of the things that that we see, and people talk about the skills gap, and there's a couple of different avenues that cause the skills gap. One is everybody always focuses on the shortage of technical people. You have the baby boomers retiring. You have a lot of young people who aren't going into manufacturing. You have young people who are going into software and not controls and electrical engineering in different areas where a lot of those really bright kids used to go to. Now they're moving in a different direction. So there's definitely a shortage of technical talent. But that's only one leg of it. The other leg of it is that our technology in the last 50 years has just gone crazy. It's taken off. If you think about in the old days, we build a machine. I mean, I'm old enough to remember a machine that if you had a good plumber a good rigger and a good electrician, you could maintain a machine. But now these machines they have welding and leak testing and all kinds of different computer controlled processes and all kinds of sensing on it and so on. So the machines have gotten so complex, and we're taking data from those machines and we're sending it up to clouds, and all of this kind of stuff just adds. The technology has expanded to and has raced to a level that our technical support hasn't kept up. And so it's a problem of a shortage of people, but it's also a problem of the technology advancing so fast. And then to add to that, we spread that technology around the world.
Right.
Where the globalization of our industry, we have some pretty complex equipment, the same equipment that we have it in Poland and in China and in Mexico and in Brazil and in the US in multiple spots. And you have to support all that equipment, and the infrastructure isn't always there.
Right. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Going back to the boomers retiring, so the latest that I have is 11,000 per year. It was 10,000 per year, and actually COVID's increased the rate. And last year was the single biggest retirement year for boomers. 3.2 million boomers retired last year, which was the largest in any year since they began to start retiring. And one thing too that you mentioned, you have all these different specialties. The equipment is getting more specialized as well, which is making it even more difficult for that level of support to be just at the plant level. Mainly because if you have a really good PLC guy, he might know how to run all those machines, but he doesn't necessarily know the intricacies of the welding. He doesn't necessarily know the intricacies of leak testing and how the leak testing comes to be. So you have some really good engineers that can fix those problems, but it's really hard to have engineers that can handle everything on the plant floor at all times.
Yeah.
So in terms of the skills gap, we talked about the rapid advance of technology. In terms of Promess and what we've done, I know we've increased the complexity or the capability of our systems. What is something that we're doing to help also simplify it for our customers?
Well, on the manufacturing side, and with Promess in particular, Promess has been developing new ways to put parts together for the last 37 years. And we've spent a lot of engineering capital, a lot of engineering intelligence to continue to increase our technology and become better and better at what we do, more power. Again, being able to collect the data, send it to the cloud, all the different types of Industry 4.0, Internet of Things, and so on. And so this all adds complexity. And forever, Promess's goal has always been that you shouldn't have to be a controls engineer to use our equipment. You should be able to, because the guy who's responsible for making good parts on a factory floor generally is a mechanical guy, a process guy. And so a mechanical engineer should be able to go in and make edits and make changes. But as we move forward, before, let's say, if we spent 70% or 80% of our time adding new technology and 20 or 30% of our efforts making that stuff simpler to use and maintain. Right now, we're kind of in a phase where we're flipping that. We're still adding additional capability and technology, but the majority of our effort right now is to take the things that we have learned to do really well over the last 25 years and put them into a form factor that is very easy to use. Because you had mentioned that the high-level controls engineer, what we find is that every plant has one or two super good controls engineers, and they can figure everything out. But the third shift guy, the second shift guy, a machine goes down and he opens up this panel and he's got all this equipment in there. How does that poor guy figure out, if he's got a line and it's got leak testing on it, and it's got welding, and it's got the Promess system, and maybe it's got a bunch of screwdrivers, and it's got all this, it's got vision, it has all this high-tech stuff. How can the average technician actually work with all that stuff? And we've kind of created the skills gap problem we were talking about. We've kind of created our own problem because of the rapid advance and variety of all this technology. It's unrealistic that we can train people that can take care of this kind of equipment on their own without having proper support.
Yeah. And I think the depth of those technologies too. I mean, if you look at a system like Promess, you can do quite a bit with just the software platform by itself. But what we want to, I think one of the goals is try and bring that up to a higher level where the interface is simpler, there's less options, there's less customization, even though the power and the brains behind the operation is still there. So it actually is putting the responsibility of the additional power behind that on the manufacturers like us, or a leak test system, or a welding system
suppliers.
Right.
Yep.
So what else can we do as manufacturers of equipment for our customers? Is there anything that we can do in order to help mitigate this and close this gap a little bit more?
When I look at our strategies, it's, you have simplification. The simplification also comes in modularization. Again, if a guy opens up this electrical panel and he's got all of these relays and all this wiring and all these different controllers, and something's not working right, to try and pinpoint where that problem is at and actually debug that is, it can take hours or days, or, I mean, it can be a major problem. Where if I have a system that's very modularized, where I have a controller with the entire press controller, and it basically has a diagnostics on it that says this has failed and this is why it's failed, and I can pull that whole unit out, put a whole new unit in, download settings, and maybe I don't even have to do that. It may download settings from another piece, and I'm up and running in a hurry. I can take that, I can send it back to the manufacturer to be repaired, or I can put it on a bench someplace and repair it. I'm not repairing it on the line. I'm getting the line back up and running. So the modularization is a large part of it. And it also keeps it very simple. Inside that module might be a lot of complexity, but the technician doesn't have to worry about that. The technician is only worried about that module pass or fail, works or doesn't work, I replace it or I don't replace it.
Yep.
So that's one of the things we're working toward is, and I think all of our technology suppliers have to work in that direction to be much more modular in the way that their architecture is.
Yep. And I think it's important to point out that it doesn't mean taking the horsepower out of the product, right? So like you said, inside of that box, it can be wildly complex, something that it may take, even the manufacturer a couple of days to really diagnose the problem. But if you can get production back up and running without having to worry about the intricacies of the circuits inside of that piece of, or that module, it makes the life of those production technicians a lot easier, and they can focus on other things within the plant. So another one of those things we mentioned, or we wanted to mention, was being integral and being an integral part of long-term support solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So what would that mean to a customer and for us to interface with a customer?
Well, because, this whole thing where we're talking about the complexity of the equipment, and going back to the original concept of the skills gap, when we talk about skills gap, a lot of people automatically presume that the skills gap is that we just don't have enough properly trained people. And I would make the argument that we could never have enough properly trained people. And by that, I mean, I kind of said that wrong, is that we will never have enough. There's just not enough people out there.
Right.
And because we talked about this gap of you have some really high level people, and then you have your very good technicians, and it's kind of like your star baseball player versus your average baseball players. Your average baseball players may want to be stars, but they just may not have that talent. So what we need to do is make sure that we are designing equipment and designing systems that it doesn't take this PhD level type of guy to work on. We have to, a lot of our customers are very, very good shop floor technicians, shop floor guys, and they need to be able to manage this product. And a lot of that is on the technology supplier, and the technology supplier partnering with these guys long term, because when they have a problem, as you had mentioned earlier, that having a guy that it's one thing to have a controls guy that really knows PLC stuff and he's great on controls, but he may not know vision, he may not know leak testing, he may not know press fit. So the experts in that field have to be available for these people. They have to be available, and that is, I think, going forward, part of the skills gap solution is a burden that has to be put on the technology supplier to be there to fill that gap. Right. To be there when that good technician calls them on the phone or gets them online, that they are there to support them. But there's a whole infrastructure that has to be put in place right now that sometimes we battle, because and this goes with this remote thing too, where we have so many plants that are diverse all over the world, or it's just, it's the same type of equipment. Well, if a guy in Malaysia needs help and there's not a technician in Malaysia, and with today's technology, it shouldn't matter. The plant technician should still be able to get a hold of the technology supplier's experts and be able they should be able to walk them through the problem. In the old days, it was a phone call, it was a cell phone. But now with the internet power we have to do a better job of closing that skills gap by being there to support our customers and to be there to support them via all kinds of different remote methods. And honestly, sometimes the end user's a little bit of a roadblock there, because their IT departments don't want us linking in to their plant machines because they're afraid viruses is going to get in and things like that. And there's different technologies now that are coming out that for security on those kind of things and stuff. So that has to be one of the major parts of solving this skills gap problem. Is not alone that we're just training new people to fill that gap, but we've got people from all over the world that can come in and fill that gap. But it's up to the technology suppliers and it's up to the end users to make that link and put that infrastructure in place, so the poor technician on the shop floor has an avenue to get help.
Yep. Yeah, and I actually have a kind of a funny story about that. Back when I was doing more application stuff, I was talking to a customer, and he would call me out of the blue on a station that had Promess on it, but he would call me even when it wasn't a Promess problem. I was like, Jerry, why are you calling me when you know it's not a Promess issue? And he's like, because you actually pick up the phone call before I can get my technicians down here on the machine. So you're helping me brainstorm what it could be before I can even get my own guys here. So it's putting in that support infrastructure even within your own plant to be able to support that equipment too. Yeah. And that kind of goes into, we talked a little bit about what us as companies and other technology suppliers can do for our customers, but what can the end users or the companies that are vetting this new technology do to help mitigate that same sales gap or skills gap, not sales gap?
I think, Promess is always, Promess is what I know. And Promess has always been very adamant about being customer first and being our support side. We've always been very proud of it. We have a 24-hour hotline where anybody around the world can call us and get technical support. We have a very strong applications group that's always there to help our customers. So the manpower and support is there. Again, it comes back to this infrastructure and taking advantage of all the technology that is available. And I think that from the end user side, the recognition that the skills gap, one of the solutions, in fact, I believe the primary solution for the skills gap, is that the technology suppliers have to be available to fill some of that skills gap. So now, from the end user perspective, they need to do two things. They need to make sure there's an infrastructure in place. And with today's technology, when we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about internet, being able where the technology suppliers can link into the equipment and monitor it and see what's wrong with it, or make adjustments and help out with adjustments or whatever needs to be done, so that they're there to support and they've got all the information. So it's more than a phone call now. Now it's ability to link in. And so the end user has to make sure that infrastructure is being put into place, and they have to push their technology suppliers to be available and to put the infrastructure in place on their side so this link can be made, and that it's a partnership. They're always there together to help each other out. They can be on a moment's notice. They can be online together and solving these problems. And my belief is that long-term, the simplification of processes, simplification of the equipment that has to be done on the technology supplier side, and this partnership between the technology supplier and the end user is going to be the primary way we solve the sales or the skills gap. Training alone and trying to driving more people toward manufacturing, I'm a huge advocate of that, but I don't believe I think that's 30% of the solution. 70% has to be solved with technology and with this partnership.
Yeah. And I think one thing that you mentioned in particular with the remote support capabilities, and something that I think might be eye-opening for maybe some of the manufacturing leaders that are watching, is if you can reliably rely on that support network from your suppliers, and they have a good support network to be able to handle your problems remotely. First, the biggest thing is selecting the right equipment to make sure that you're not going to have as many issues in the first place, right? But when you do have some engineering problems, having that support network also allows you to maybe have to rely on less resources. So
yeah, for sure.
Going back to your baseball analogy, I'm not a baseball person, but there's a salary cap, right? You can't have a full team of PhD, PLC guys to figure out every problem in your plant. But if you can have a team of, just your guys that can handle most of the stuff in the plant, and then have, the phone a friend support from your technology right. suppliers, you don't really need the extensive, salary requirements and skill requirements of those top level guys.
Yeah. Well, to go along with that analogy, because see, baseball, their salary cap is all messed up. So you have some companies that might be the New York Yankees yeah. that can buy all these superstars, but we're all not the New York Yankees. Right. A lot of us we're the low market manufacturers who don't, we're the Pittsburgh Pirates who have to operate on a smaller budget. Right. And exactly right. You don't have to, you don't have to have all these superstars, and finding those superstars is always a problem. But and then how many can you have, and can you have a guy enough people on board that can keep up with all these technologies, all three shifts, and so on.
Right. So, well, and if you're a smaller manufacturer, maybe say 30 to 50 people, low volume, high mix type environment, you're really going to be relying on that support much more than, say, a company that has 50 PLC guys on controls yep. engineers on staff.
Well, this is kind of a side thing away from the skills gap, but this is one of the cool things about this as this evolves, is that this building these infrastructures and being able to support these things, support the technology from the technology suppliers and more remotely, will allow companies and manufacturing facilities that don't have the infrastructure to support really complex technologies, this kind of gives them that infrastructure, it opens the door to technology to some companies that may never have been able to support it. So this is a kind of a side benefit. We do a lot of work with the automotive, and automotives, they got really good controls engineers and really good controls departments and really good technical groups and electricians and so on. And they struggle sometimes supporting with theirs, with this very high level of technical support the automotive guys have. A lot of other industries don't have that same infrastructure in place. So the better we get at supporting these technologies through the integrators, through the technology suppliers, and remotely, it really opens up technology to some manufacturers that may not have thought that they could support it in the past.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, just to summarize, I think the main points for us as manufacturers of this type of technology is a goal for us is to take the complexity out of our solutions, to simplify and modularize. I don't know if that's a word, but it sounds good.
I made it up if it's
not. That is going to be a key strategy going forward, I think, for a lot of manufacturers of assembly technology and test technology. Making sure that companies like us have long-term support solutions, being in on applications from the very get-go, being experts in our own customers' applications, I think has been something that we've been really successful at and will continue to do. And other companies are starting to do that now as well. And then offering and helping with those remote support solutions. So obviously COVID has kind of pushed everyone into that realm, but making sure that those support solutions are effective.
It's definitely accelerated what we're doing.
Yep. And then obviously from the manufacturing side or the end user side, making sure that those plant floor connections with your technology suppliers is going to be a huge thing going forward. Making sure that you can rely on your technology suppliers, creating the ability to have those remote support solutions. So figuring out ways to get past the IT security channels and things like that to allow your suppliers to get in and work on those stations. And that goes globally, right? So you have to be able to support that infrastructure if you're global, obviously. And then, like you mentioned, a big part of the skills gap too is still training people, making sure that they have the proper education, and even things like doing remote training, say through us or any other technology supplier, is something that can help even your average controls engineers or technicians have a little bit of knowledge to be able to do most things themselves. So unless you have anything, I think we can probably go into some questions if we have them.
No, I think I'm all set.
Okay. So can you elaborate on taking the complexity out of solutions?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that as we went from simple operations and we started adding automation. I mean, this has been a 50-year trek at least of adding automation, making machines more complex, trying to do more where your guy loads a part and the part goes around and everything's done to it. And it's, you have one piece of equipment that is very specialized in doing a lot of operations. What we're finding a lot of people are doing now, and the robot technology has kind of lent itself to this, is that creating more specialized, simple stations, and then having a robot like move the part from one station to the other. And just that is simplified things a lot, because if I have a station that only does pressing, at least I know if there's a problem, I know who to go to. You go to Promess. Right. Or if I have a station that does leak testing and it has a problem, I know who to go to. I go to whoever, CTS or whoever supplied my leak test stuff, and so on. So the stations, if they're more modularized in themselves, that is that goes a long ways to being able to, if I have a problem, I know where the problem's at. Yeah. I don't have this machine that's got 25 different operations on it, and it's kind of difficult when I open up the cabinet and the cabinet's got all the different electronics and all the different controls, and I got one PLC that's trying to organize all this stuff. It gets very complex. So just the simplifications of the station themselves, and then from the technology supplier, what we're working on is at the Promess station or the press station, that the controller gives you a lot of information. So if there, if there is a problem, it tells me what the problem is. But if I need to make a change, it's very easy to go in and make a change. Because most of the time, it's not that the machine's down or there's a problem. A lot of times, it's that I need to make an adjustment.
Right.
And but if I have one technician that's responsible for adjusting, again, something's with a vision system, I feel we have our technicians who are very, very strong with our press systems, and it's a lot of work for us to keep our employees and our technicians up to date on Promess stuff. If I had to try and keep these guys up to date on Promess product and on leak testers and on vision and on all this kind of stuff, I just don't understand how it can be done.
Yeah, you wouldn't make anything. You'd just have all your people in training all year long.
I mean, it's a challenge. Yeah.
And I think even going down another step too in the actual programming, most of my customers, I would even go as far to say like 98% of my customers just use a basic press template program, right? Mm-hmm. So the program can be pretty complex, but they'll use that same program for all of their similar parts of that same style. Yep. So taking that template and modularizing the programming itself, and then just plugging in your values for each different product is
keeping it simple. Well, at Promess, we're developing a new product called the Flex IQ, which is actually aimed exactly at this. The Flex IQ, the whole goal of this new controller, this new software platform, is to take all of the technology, like you mentioned earlier, not getting rid of the horsepower, still having the horsepower, but putting it in a form factor that is more modularized, easier to use, and easier to maintain, that actually a technician should be able to take this out of a box, have it set up and running in an hour. Yeah. And that's our goal. And it's the whole focus on the Flex IQ is to take all the horsepower we've developed over the years and put it into an easier to use package.
Yeah, that's great. So one question, how many of your customers rely on remote support? I'm going to do a pre-COVID and a post-COVID.
Yeah, we've always had the capability to do remote support, but we have a service team that if our customers, a lot of times they want us, they call us, we're there. But during COVID, you can't do that, of course. So we've done, I think our remote support has, it's quadrupled or more during the COVID period. So I would say at one point or another, 50 to 70% of our customers rely on remote support. And we do we have some infrastructure in place to do that. We can log into our systems and make changes and monitor it and kind of answer questions. And a lot of times with our stuff, since we do monitoring, it's helping a person adjust a limit, or they want to try a different kind of monitoring strategy or something like that. It's normally not big changes, but it's something that you need to have your eyes on the station to do.
Right.
And so again, I go back to the biggest thing is that a lot of times it's a struggle to get a network line down to the factory floor so we can plug into our equipment. And I understand it's these manufacturers' IT departments that's worried about the security of the system. But that is a problem we have to get around. We have to figure out, via edge controllers and other ways to be able to plug into a system securely, because if we really want to take this to the next level where the remote support is a huge part of what fills the skills gap and also helps these remote plants be supported better, then there is a burden put on the end user to come up with an architecture where the suppliers can log in and potentially maybe stay logged in 100% of the time, be monitoring 100% of the time, because we're putting the infrastructure in place to be able to connect into every single one of our systems if it's possible, and stay connected in and monitor them, and hopefully get back to our customers and let them know what's going on with their stations faster than they know it.
Yeah. That makes me really excited about the future of manufacturing, be able to call up a customer before he knows that he has a problem and
Yep.
be able to say, hey, you need to go down to the station on the floor and look at that. So,
Yep.
Everyone claims that they have the best support. How do you know you provide what you're saying, with best being capitalized?
That is always a tough one. That's from, again, Promess's perspective, just a sales pitch perspective. Promess is known in the industry as providing very, very good support. When you're talking to a new customer and you say that, everybody says that, that is correct. And the biggest thing that Promess gets a lot of repeat business, and a lot of it is because of our support level. We partner with our customers, we really do. The biggest thing we have that kind of puts this in perspective is we do have a 24-hour availability. We have technicians who are available 24 hours a day. You call at 2 o'clock in the morning, you'll get somebody. You'll first get a voicemail, but you'll have somebody call you back right away. So we put some mechanisms in place to be able to make sure we're there to support our customers. Honestly, though, that's a thing we struggle with all the time, is that we know we do great support, and our customers know we do great support, but they don't know it till they try us.
Yeah, exactly. You can't really do a marketing ad or something like that saying you have the best support, because it'll look like everyone else's.
Everyone says it. Yep.
Yeah. So that's kind of the end of the discussion. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. So thanks for joining me, Glenn.
Thank you.
Couple of things, I guess, to mention. We have the Torque Basics for Assembly is our next webinar in October. And if you found this webinar insightful, I challenge you to go and check out our Manufacturing Unscripted podcast as well, where we talk about a lot of these issues. You can find it on all the podcast sites. Subscribe, and we put out shows every couple of weeks too, where we're talking a lot more in depth about industry issues, have some other technology manufacturers out there kind of giving some of their perspective of what they're seeing in the industry as well. So
yeah, one of the cool things with our podcast, Manufacturing Unscripted, is we've had a lot of great guests.
Yeah,
from other companies come in and talk about their technologies or things that they're interested in manufacturing.
Are you really just saying that because you've been on there a couple times?
I've been on there a couple times, but I talk a lot. So I think I love when we have guests,
right?
Other people that I can learn from.
Yeah. So thanks again for watching. Have a great day.
Thank you.